Thanks for joining us today, here and online. I guess we have a few people checking in. So I guess I should say it's always fun to come back here to Rice Creek because I have a long and storied history with this institution, I guess. And Mom, you can probably help me out with this. So I was 5, 6, 7 years old, maybe around there, when I started to come here for their Exploring Nature program, which is, I'm sure all of you know, but it's a 2-week program through the summer. I saw Tim out there because he's not here right now, but Tim was one of the great counselors that I had for that program, along with many others. Diane, she was here, all kinds of other people who just helped sort of foster this appreciation for nature. And we do the trails and everything and have all these little experiments and stuff. We get wet and dirty and go in the fish ladder and catch crayfish. And then I moved down south and started calling them crawfish. Right? But yeah, we spent a lot of good time through the summer, and then in other seasons as well, going to Fallbrook and sledding and coming around at various other times, and just seeing what all of this looks like throughout the seasons, and really kind of diving in and looking at all the different species, and there's all the labels and everything as you're going through, right? It causes you to pause and kind of check something out and just admire it for a moment or just be curious. And then we'd have all the games that we play, predator and prey and things like that, and catch butterflies, and we take out the pond, we take a sample, right? Scoop it up, dump it into something, bring it back to the lab and go, all right, what's in here, right? So all of that, I think I tend to take that for granted, but if I stop and think and look back on that, like, oh, that's a really special thing that not everybody gets to do. But of course, it's great when we can expand that and get more and more people involved at that in an early age. So my lovely assistant, who's an even lovelier wife and mother, Megan and I have 2 sons, Rowan and Kieran, and we love to take them out and go exploring with them as well in our woods, and whenever we're out and about. And we, Megan and I in 2016 decided we would hike the Appalachian Trail, which, Megan kind of growing up out in the country and me gaining an appreciation for nature through Rice Creek and elsewhere, we were all about it, very gung ho, and made that our mission for the summer. And we did it. We completed it, and we had a grand old time. So of course we're happy to talk about that at length as well, which we've done here. I think some of you were here at that talk. But yeah, to get into some of what's laid out in front of us here, we tried to kind of group it together a little bit. I do want to start with one. I'll give one of our audience members a nice shout out here. So Michael Holy, who's in the audience here, is a butterfly expert and has literally written a book on the subject. And we had him in the store and had a great event. We showed off all of the what would you call them? Not the sample. You had them pinned up in the cases, right? Yeah, all the specimens. Thanks. And so he showed off a bunch of those. He's taken some beautiful photographs of all of these, and copious notes and all kinds of wonderful information about all the butterflies that you would see, throughout Rice Creek, through the region, and elsewhere. And we also have here this fantastic book, Bicycling with Butterflies. And Sherry, you read this?
Yes.
Yes.
wrote a little review in the newsletter. That's a fun book if you're interested in monarch butterflies. Also, if you like to ride bikes. The woman is a scientist, and she cobbled together this bike. I don't know how much it weighed, and it describes how she put it together. And then she went from Mexico. She went the migration all the way up to Canada.
Wow.
And she talks about all the people she met along the way. She gave educational talks at schools, and just the chutzpah of this woman doing this is if you're a woman, it's pretty inspiring. In the monarch butterflies, the people she met, and it's a really good read. It goes fast.
Yeah, I love it. 10,201-mile journey.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I wasn't able to see them while I was there, but I was in Mexico and Michoacan, which is kind of like one end of the the spectrum there, right? And that's very interesting too, like to see how throughout that journey, you know, how they might be kind of threatened along the way, because that's a pretty big, arduous journey. So as things change along the way, whether you know climate change issues, any deforestation, you know, like loss of habitat or whatever, right, can kind of like alter that along the way. Where is it? Oh, I guess I'll jump to this one. So I mentioned our trek on the AT, on the Appalachian Trail. And speaking of these journeys, right? This is a great one called Tiny Worlds of the Appalachian Mountains by Rosalie Hazlitt. And she hiked a bit of it. She also drove, you know, but she was kind of just making her way, like meandering through, and getting to all these beautiful vistas and wherever, you know, throughout. It wasn't just all these pretty overlooks, you know, she'd, you know, get down on her hands and knees looking into a log or something like that, right? And just have these beautiful illustrations of all the species that you might encounter along the way. She does this cool map. I don't know, does it work? People see it? I know it's backwards, but if you get the idea, I want to just highlight some of the ones that she's done. And it's great because you hit these, you know, along the way if you catch it at the right season, right? You can really get a great view of all of the wildlife throughout. He's got some of these the waterfalls and everything. Turtle, but just like beautiful illustrations. And so it's always interesting to meet artists along the way as we're hiking the trail. See photographers or people sketching, or even poets. You know, they say, I'm going to write a poem a day, right? And just to be inspired by all of that stuff that was around them at the time. Just a few more, like some slime molds and things. I mean, she like really went all out. Some more of those. Yeah. This is a beautiful collection. Nice little gift. These are fun. These are all photographs, right? And little synopses, little profiles. The Smithsonian Handbook of Interesting Bird Nests and Eggs, right? So very cool. They have all of these in their collection, and some more recent than others, but some are, you know, they were collected like 100 years ago or 200 years ago, right? And in somebody's collection, and sometimes it's funny because they try to maintain as much as they can of the nest, of course, right? So if the bird built it in some, you know, in some funny little spot, they'd say, okay, yeah, we're going to keep that. This one's still attached to the stick. They built it, you know, out of mud, crafted all around this one particular stick. And that's a buff-spotted woodpecker, if you're curious. But yeah, there's like the log itself, right? Because it was just kind of like hollowed out and then gone inside. This was a kind of a neat thing to stumble upon. But yeah, they're all very unique, you know, and I think some of them are just so impressive to learn of how they craft this one. So this one, there's like a thread through that. The birds did not, you know, they weave expertly enough, right? but this thread was by somebody else who was trying to preserve it. You know, when they took it, they said, okay, we don't want to lose it, right? So they carefully wove it through, and there it stays, right? Um, so yeah, just like a really, really cool little collection there. Yeah, sorry, that was Douglas G.D. Russell. Thank you. Um, all right. So one thing that we loved to do when we were hiking AT was night hiking. So especially, you know, you got the energy, you want to add some more miles. Um, maybe you got a late start. That would happen once or twice. And most especially if you have like a full moon, right? And you're not completely covered. You know, sometimes they call it the green tunnel as you're going through, you know, like Virginia or something, right? All these smaller trees and rhododendron kind of like build up around you, and you have all this cover, so you might not be able to see the sky. But when we would go on the paths that were you know, next to the edge of a field, you know, at the tree line or something like that, maybe going right through a field or on a ridge or something when you could really kind of see everything. That was very exciting. So, so this one caught my eye. It's Night Magic, Adventures Among Glowworms, Moon Gardens, and Other Marvels of the Dark. So it's all of those things that you might encounter throughout the night, you know, on a nice little evening gallivant, right? Um, and there were a few times I think we did see some glowworms, you know, like an owl kind of like silently swooping right over our heads. And every once in a while you would get to a spot where maybe there's some, like a narrow passage, you know, some like a tight little space or a fence or something like that, where all of a sudden, you know, if you didn't have your headlamp on, right, then you might be running into a spider web or something, you know, so it'd be like right in front of your face. And we always used to give our thanks to the earliest hikers in the morning, those who would go out first and, you know, excuse me, come through, and they, you know, unfortunately have to get right through the webs, and then the spiders would build them right back up again, you know. So yeah, that was called Night Magic, and that is by Lee Ann Henyon. So the author of Phenomenal, if anyone's read that. Yes.
When you talked about the early morning hikers, I think this has nothing to do with books.
Yeah, go ahead.
But how were the crowds on the trail? Did you feel like you were saying, hi, hello?
It is very social, like right out of the gates, especially if a lot of people are starting right around the same time and they're all heading northbound, right? So if you have a bunch of people, April Fool's Day is a fun day to start. A lot of people say, well, why not? You know, it's this potentially like this fool's errand, right? So and just given the weather, right, and the timeline. So a lot of people are starting March, April, and you encounter the bubble, right? And it is very social very early on, and a lot of people kind of you know, forming these groups or not, you know, those who just want to go. And then you kind of really get into it, and it kind of the bubble remains, you know, there's still that sort of mass, but it does thin out to a degree. And there's a little less sitting around a campfire at night. Like, oh, where are you from? Oh, yeah, no kidding. What's your story, right? It's just like, yep, 10, cool. Oh man, all right, flip the water. Gotta hit the hay, right? And then you're down, and you're up again in the morning. Like, all right, let's get a new start. And so still social enough, you know, but just a little bit less of that, you know, kind of taking your time and getting to know everyone at first. And then, and you've kind of like made some friends at that point, and maybe you have a little group, or you're kind of doing what we call leapfrogging, right? It's like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you in a week. How you been? Then the interesting thing after that is you get the southbounders, right, and vice versa. So the first southbounders, like whoever's the vanguard of the the southbound crew, has to go by everybody who hasn't seen one yet and go, hey, how you doing? And they're like, are you? Oh man, are you? And it's like, yep, yes, yeah, yep. Southbound, yep, okay, excuse me, you know. So that's another like funny aspect of it. Be like, yep, nice to meet you. Can't stay in chat. Otherwise I'd be stuck here in Pennsylvania forever. I got to keep going. So yeah, and that's fun. And then that group you finished with, that's pretty special too. There are a few that we put on quite a few miles with a group, and to summit Katahdin with them, you know, that's really cool. And a handful of them ended up at our wedding after that. So yeah.
Emil, so the last book you showed us, the title was Night Magic.
Night Magic,
right?
yes.
But there's another sort of magic that takes place on the trail.
Yes, indeed. Trail magic. Yeah, provided by Trail Angels, which is very cool. Yeah, you got to participate in that, which was very special. And we'd love to go back and do it. Because well, where did you
The only hut on the trail in Massachusetts.
mhm.
The trail, it's the only overnight hut. We hosted Upper Goose Pond. Did you?
Oh yeah. That one's really cool. That's a sizable establishment there.
Welcome people in and make pancakes.
Mm-hmm. That one is really cool, and it's right on a little lake there, right? To the pond, yeah, as you mentioned. And there's little canoes and stuff that people take out. There's a little island a little ways out, right? Yeah. That one was great. Little home away from home type feeling. It's cool. Yeah, a little funky.
The hikers are not complaining, people.
Yeah. Yep. Crowd hiker trash. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just hop in the truck bed. It's fine. We're like hitching a ride or something. Yeah, much fun. That was good. And the trail magic experience and people kind of just like helping out along the way, just to try to get you along and see you through. That's pretty cool. Let me see. What am I gonna jump to now? Let's see. Yeah, so we'll grab these. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with The Hidden Life of Trees, right? Peter Wohlleben. Phenomenal bestseller, all about how trees actually communicate, right? And years ago, someone would say, okay, cool, that's a fun little hippy dippy story, gonna go out and hug your trees. And, yeah, I'm sure they're talking to each other, but they really do have methods of communication. And over the past few decades, it's really kind of come out, right? There've been a lot of important studies regarding this. And who's Suzanne Simard? Yep, is one who's done a lot of work on that, and Peter as well, right? So how they communicate through the roots, and how pollen can work, and all of that, and things that we don't even quite yet understand, and how that works. So yeah, that's Peter, and that's like a big focus of this one. And then he also came out with the forest walking, discovering the trees and woodlands of North America. So this is a great, a lot of these, there's like the thread running through a lot of these, right? It's just like, well, what do you see when you're out there, like when you're actually walking around, right? And he's talking about certain things to look out for as you're on a trail. And similarly, Forest Forensics does a cool dive into that. That's Tom Wessels, author of Reading the Forested Landscape. And he does a cool little breakdown if you're trying to assess, like what is the agricultural history of an area. If you're trying to ascertain, like old growth and wind effects on an area, logging and fire, right? And so it kind of breaks it down into these questions, in this chart, A and B, right? Yes and no, right? To get you through, and then just has a bunch of examples through that, whether by human or by nature, right? of like just all the different ways that that the forest can be altered, right? And to just try to understand the story, because you only ever have like that snapshot as you're going through, right? And just trying to learn more about it, right? And it's some of it can be very basic, but it's good to to help people of any age understand, like this one, for instance, like compares a tree that has sort of naturally fallen down, it's decayed and like fallen over, and there's like the rough stump there, right? Versus okay, it looks like somebody cut that, right? And so some of that can be very basic, right? But then you look into other ones, it's like various barks and what those can tell us, and certain like deadfall and other different features. So that was kind of neat. I thought I had another one like that somewhere. I know I had mentioned one the last time when Bill and I were here, how to read nature's hidden signs. But anyway, I'll show you this one as well, because this goes along with that. This is so Turning to Stone by Marcia Bjornerud, discovering the subtle wisdom of rocks. So you know what Peter has done for trees, essentially a very like a similar thing with rocks, right? They all tell their story. And she talks about how we've kind of imprinted that everywhere, right? Like over the past, 4 billion years or whatever. It's like all of that is there. There's a record of life on Earth there in all of these rocks, right? So, and then, ties that, of course, into there's the philosophical aspect of it, right? And the wisdom, like what we can learn from that. And so I can jump to, some more birding here. We've got Comfort of Crows, right? And Margaret Reichel, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. And many of you know Amy Tan from Joy Luck Club, right? The Backyard Bird Chronicles, and forwards by David Allen Sibley here. And of course, you gotta have your collection for your life list. If you're any birder worth your salt, you have to be checking them off as you see them, right? Gotta catch them all.
Bill,
Yeah.
that Amy Tan book,
Yes.
you sort of grew out of a medical condition that she had.
Yeah.
That
And
forced her to stay at home.
yeah, so she's stuck, and it's like, okay, now what, right? She sees them fly by, and like, what's that, right? And she's a writer, right? So it's a compulsive thing.
Is it a good book for people that don't go?
I know. I haven't read it.
That's a good question, actually. I think there's,
She's got great illustrations.
yeah, I was just gonna say there's, just to show you some of these, and it's all that very cool, the little notes that she's written down for each
Like
one.
she's shy about, I read that her editor said, you need to put this in a book, and she said, oh no, I just draw these things for myself.
Right, and it's like, come on, these are gorgeous, right?
I think nonfiction can be intimidating. You feel like you'll be under such a different level of scrutiny. Fiction, you're just making it up.
She wanted to have her, she didn't think her art was good enough.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, these are amazing, right? So to think that she's like, oh no.
That's part of the creative process.
Rather not.
It's a process.
And so how baby birds explore, for instance, right? And she's got like how they actually kind of bop around, and start picking away at things. And yeah, it's very cool. It's a great collection. Yellow jackets versus mealworms versus songbirds versus yellow jacket trap. It's all four of them, vying for their space and their habitat. Yeah, so these are beautiful collections here. And then there are there's these cool little like these sort of what you call them, like almost collage looking, like that, these illustrations that show up in here as well, comfort. And then on top of that, so this, once you're inspired, right? So like, I'm gonna do my own my own version of that, right? She's come up with the Leaf Cloud Crow Weekly Backyard Journal. This is Margaret Rankle again, right? And so the idea there is that you do your very own survey of your landscape, right? There's little quotes in there, but week by week, and then the prompts, for instance, how do the wild animals near you make use of fallen leaves, of dried grasses, of dead flowers? Reflect on the benefits of an untidy yard, right? So I love that because even in just that little bit, it's kind of maybe inspiring you to help nature by not cleaning everything up and making it super tidy and everything, right? Because these animals need certain resources that we're so often seeing as a nuisance, right? And we want to just pack it up and get it out of here. But you can just leave some leaves in your yard and help them out immensely, right?
Nice companion because her book goes through it by month. So it's like you go through the seasons with her and you can go through your seasons at the same time. So it's really a neat aspect of that one.
Yeah. We do, I'm sure some of you know Susan Peterson Gately, right? And so we've had this in for a little while, but I think it bears repeating. Natural History of Lake Ontario. This is sort of a best of. She took all of the smaller almost like chapbooks that she had done previously, little guides on, looking, birding on Lake Ontario, or like a guide to the rocks, right? And things like that. She like threw that all together into a really nice package that published by History Press, and they've done some great stuff. They also. I'm about to lean over that, probably not. That's not going well. Another one that's been around for a little while, but 'tis the season, right? So we've got Jim Farfalla's Historic Snowstorms of Central New York. And then this one's great. It's chock full of stories and photos and things. All the snow over your head and all that crazy blizzards and whatnot. But again, also published by History Press. So it's really cool to see some of these local authors we've been working with for years, get picked up by a larger press, larger distribution. So now we know that books like these are potentially going all around the country with ease. I did want to in the winter season to point out this one by Gary Paulson from Winter Dance. And I think you guys were looking at this earlier, right? It's all about the Iditarod, right? The husky race, the sled race. And I reread, I've not read this one yet, but I recently reread Hatchet for the first time in a long time. I think I read it when I was 13, now at 39. I'm like, yeah, I'll give it another look. Man, this book's really cool. I think that would be a fun one to read with the kids in a year or two. But yeah, he's just a phenomenal author. He passed a few years ago, but has written some great stuff for children and adults, right? Kind of runs the gamut of just the great outdoors in general. That is his wheelhouse. And this one specifically deals with the Iditarod. All right, get through a few more here. Do you want to grab?
This one's not so bad.
Oh, yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, right down there.
Yeah. Okay. So. So we've got two here dealing with climate change, right? We've got Fire Weather on the Front Lines of a Burning World by John Valiant. And What If We Get It Right by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. And the letter, the two, you know, the interesting thing with this is it's a collection of the subtext there is a subtitle of Visions of Climate Futures. She's done all these great interviews with people, Bill McKibben, for instance, you know, all kinds of other folks who are, you know, kind of on the front lines of climate change, right? And she's asking like, well, what if we can figure it out? What if we actually get, you know, if we get our stuff together, like what does that look like, right? And so it's you know, it's highly optimistic, right? And it's looking at all these various possibilities. And then there are just a handful, you know, it's not chock full of illustrations, but there are like a few funny ones that they've created on a computer, right? You know, because this doesn't exist yet. We're not in this future, but what might that look like? You know, living off the land, and you know, like recycling all of these resources and things like that. And what do the communities look like and everything. And so yeah, she's tried to view it from a few different angles, and all of these great interviews with various scientists and other folks. Do have, and then many of you read Overstory by Richard Powers, I'm sure, right? Phenomenal book, right? And it's all of the, for those of you who haven't read it without spoiling anything, you know, it's a few interweaving stories, right? And all to do with ostensibly trees. There's much more to it, right? But it really does revolve around trees. And so he's done a similar thing here with water, with the oceans, right? And all of these interweaving threads, all these various characters who kind of get pulled in together, you know, like through this world. That's what's been called Playground. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's sort of like a spiritual successor to Overstory, right? If you enjoyed that, you may really love this one. And I would be remiss if I didn't show my friend Maggie's books, because Maggie is a wonderful illustrator and has done Adirondack Lullaby and my Adirondack Vacations, which is by Rob. So the text is Rob Ego Jr. and Brian J. Hines for this one, but Maggie has done all the illustrations for these, and they're gorgeous. She's a great artist and a great person to boot. This is really pretty illustrations there. Again, all the different species that you'd run into up in the Adirondacks. There's the one here. Some more loons. We love our loons. Yeah, just getting out there camping. Oh, that's right. So this is yeah, this one's a honker, but it's pretty great. This is another sort of series, right? Atlas Obscura. There's been a few volumes of this so far, and the original ones just started with all these obscure locations around the world that, you know, not too many people know about, and they've done little profiles of them. They say, "Oh, did you know that there's this amazing place in India where such and such happened?" Oh, wow, what? I never knew that. Right? So like that was their whole thing initially. Of these harder to reach places or kind of ancient forgotten places and things like that, right? So they kept going with that. Sort of that theme, and they've done a few different volumes, and this one is specifically on wildlife, right? Great photos, great illustrations in here. Explains all kinds of different things. Here's a bit on spirit bears, for instance. All these different national parks and things like that. There you go. There's the secret lake with trees once again, right? The original social network, right? All the trees talking to each other. But all kinds of cool, just kind of oddball. It's like the fun fact books of yore, right? And they've really kind of put it all together in like a really nice package that does a bit more of a deep dive, right? So if you have like sort of I mean, anybody can get anything out of it, but especially like a precocious young reader who's if they're a strong reader and they like really want to learn more about all of these very unique features in nature, this is great. It's just so full of information. Yeah, I mean, there's just like it goes on and on and on. All kinds of different habitats, different species. Right. That is Atlas Obscura Wildlife. Then that's about it. And then of course everyone's welcome to come up afterwards and like check everything out. Oh, I should mention the service berry. Megan, would you grab that for me?
Coveted
Yeah.
copy. We only have one with us right now.
So Robin Wallkimmer, of course, Braiding Sweetgrass, been huge hit. Refuses to leave the bestseller list, which is great. It's just it's this lovely collection of indigenous wisdom and modern science and all kinds of stuff, and then her own personal journey and everything. And then the service berry, abundance and reciprocity in the natural world, is one that she just released, right? There's the fact that all flourishing is mutual, right? So it's a treatise on that sort of those aspects of nature, right? And our interaction with everything around us, right? As given by examples of like all these different species, but like just given, like here's one example, right? And so the cool thing that the publishers did, and this is the last copy that we have of the original shipment. We're waiting for more. But they sent out this little sort of like bookmark here with serviceberry seeds imprinted into this sort of recycled paper here, right? So everybody who got one of the original ones can plant their own, right? So it's very unique. But again, this is our last copy for the moment. So first come, first serve for that. And then I guess just to round things out, we do have some poetry collections in the natural world, right? So this one is The Universe in Verse, 15 Portals to Wonder Through Science and Poetry by Maria Popova. And You Are Here by Ada Limon, Poetry in the Natural World. So she edits this one and introduces it. And there are tons of poets who contributed to this one as well. So that's a nice little collection for you as well. No.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
24th. Poetry.
Bill, can I
Yeah.
can I put in a plug for a book?
Yeah, go for it, of course.
So years ago at a conference, we met a first-time author at a conference. Her name is Elizabeth Rush. She happens to be a professor at Brown. And her academic focus isn't what she's writing about. She's been writing books that have to do with climate change. And her most recent book just went from hardcover to paperback, and it is called The Quickening. So Elizabeth gets an opportunity to go on this vessel, this research vessel into the Arctic, and she's torn because She also wants to start a family. And this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for her to go with this research vessel and see firsthand, what's happening, to explore some never before explored area and be part of that. And she makes the decision to delay starting a family to go on this exploration voyage. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Mindy and I have both read it. It's she takes this adventure, this trip, and expands it to encompass all these real life decisions that we have to make, the sacrifices that we make. If we choose to do one thing, that means we're not going to be able to do something else. And what does it mean to bring a child into the world today? The resources that they're consuming, so all this that she's focusing on in terms of climate change and all in her writing, she's, bringing it right home into, how am I living my life, as a wannabe mom to be, right? And it's fabulous. The Quickened by Elizabeth Rush, and it's in paperback, and it addresses, some of what we've been talking about today, but even more.
Yeah.
Is that book in your store?
I think we have a few copies around.
Yeah, I have to double check if it's active in stock, but I know we had it in paperback.
Yeah. And in our last communique with Elizabeth, she said she would definitely stop in if she was in the area. So we'll let you know if anything,
The email came from
comes to that. Yeah. That's about all I have for the showcase, so to speak. But I thought I might end with a poem, if you'll humor me. It's one of the poems in the collection by Hanif Abdurraqib, and we had talked about the running into the spider webs and all that earlier. So I thought it might be maybe fitting. There are more ways to show devotion than we can ever know in this lifetime. Once you traced a finger along the traffic of webs in the distance, stitched along the top right corner of the window frame, troubling the sun, its beams breaking apart at the web's center, a single open eye, flicking light along our open hands. The spider builds a new web every day, bigger. Each time, in the left corner and then the right, the spider once worked above us while we slept, and then in the morning, the spider spun itself into silent waiting, or longing, maybe invisible, but for its hunger, which is another word for desire, if desperation were off the table, and all that remained were two open arms waiting for an agreeable heart. But it is like me to imagine the spider believes itself a failure, what with its dance from corner to corner, its web eclipsing more and more of the woodwork with each passing day, and still nothing to show for it, but another night tearing down, rebuilding, and another morning of light stumbling into a window, laughing at the barren web, which is a plea, a moan, a disaster of a lonely maze. I respect the patience of heartbreak, how it waits through the sweetness, through the familiar beauty, and then reveals itself through what doesn't return or never arrives at all. And it is only you, and a series of blinking memories, the moments you had once and believed yourself able to touch again. I think another word for this is hunger. I make the bed in the mornings now every day. It looks new again, like no one has ever been in it. Thank you.
So much. And also what I'm not selling these, but these are a little more local. There's some of the guides for the area. There's one, The Birds of Rice Creek, which is really beautifully illustrated. You've seen that before. And there's, the insect guide and plants guide, butterfly guide, in addition to Mike's book is really good. Is it the one that Emil started with?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's right here.
If you like, local stuff, we have copies of John Weeks' book, if you haven't read that, it's, we have graduated actually long ago, but he was well-known all over central New York, and all his writings on nature are beautiful. So these are available as well. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and
Yeah.
a lot of books.
Cool. Thank you.